Okay. So I just want to thank everyone for checking in and coming to be with us tonight. As usual, I have a couple of quick announcements and thanking our sponsors. On top of the list, B&H Camera tonight, Epson, Dano over there, Pro Photo Daily, and American Illustrator and American Photographer with Jeff Robert and David Chernauer. Can't thank you guys enough for promoting us and helping us all the way through, and the wonderful folks over at Photo Shelter. A little bit of business. The deadline is Friday the 19th to submit your videos for our essential worker presentation, which is next week on the 24th, which promises to really be terrific. We've got a lot of great video pieces of workers from hospitals to a UPS guy who's just phenomenal. And can't thank everyone enough for sending those in. And we have until Friday to send more in, so please, if you're working on it, we have plenty of time. And tonight we have three terrific presenters. We have Stefan Falke for Aresu, and we start off with the New York City shooter who's been shooting what seems like forever, Bruce Byers. And Bruce, you're on the clock, so here we go. Thanks.
All right, Bruce, we're going to unmute you.
Oh, wait a second.
Go ahead, and you can start your screen. You can start sharing your screen.
Good.
And I'm going to kill our video feeds.
Okay. My name is Bruce Byers, and I really want to thank Frank and Projections and Cliff and our sponsors for pulling this together. This is a really emotional time, and the project that I want to show you, it really is celebrating some people that I've really gotten to know. I consider myself a documentary environmental portrait storyteller, and I have been telling stories with my camera since the late 60s. Bangladesh is one of my favorite places to go. China, cleft lip into Pakistan, into the Middle East, and just the things that I've gotten involved with, the funeral in Bangladesh. But the thing that I really has happened with all the places that I've gone in the world, I've shot a few missions here in the United States, and it's been, why do I always go somewhere else? Well, I haven't found one here in the United States as big as the one that I found now. I was in the park photographing my wife. She wanted some pictures with her mask, and I heard this noise up on 77th Street, and I ran up there. It was a 7 o'clock clapping, and this is what I ran into. And it was just fire trucks and nurses and doctors and police and everything else. Just amazing. And so I photographed, as I normally do, as I normally document. And the next day, for some reason, I decided to come back and give them prints of the day before. And you should have seen the smiles. And it was the biggest uplifting of these people who had been sitting inside that hospital right behind, going through the deaths and going through the recoveries, just day in and day out. This is down in Greenwich Village, and this is just the crowd that would come out and clap for these people, and they would come out and celebrate. It was kind of their way of releasing. They just had to release. It was literally for 5 minutes, and you know, they came out with all their, I mean, oh nurse, you know, when that plate came out, it was like, I've got to photograph that. And the personalities of these people just beamed right through their masks. And I mean, all I can say is hope you can see the professionalism and the care through the pictures. I then was able, another photographer actually got a photograph of me with some of the photographs. Inside the hospital, they started wallpapering the walls with the photographs I've taken. And I think that as of today, I've probably given them 1,800 photographs in which they have put all over the inside. As this went along, I kept hearing, oh, this is a hoax, this isn't real, whatever. And I photographed this trailer behind and found out that it's a morgue. Well, this is a major hospital. If this is a hoax, how come they have to bring in an extra morgue? The woman here that's got her arms crossed crying lost her brother through this, and devastating loss, just absolutely devastating loss. A candlelight, of course there's an app for that, candlelight walk where they're celebrating the loss of the employees of the hospital during this, which is incredibly emotional. 200-300 nurses walked around the block 3 or 4 times just for those people that they lost. The police showed up on their horses all the time. One of the riders' mother worked in Lenox Hill, and just moments. The moments were nonstop. Downtown, I photographed both hospitals because it was for the nurses union, and I photographed Lenox Hill at 77th and Lenox Hill at Greenwich Village. About 1,300 nurses in the union, and this is downtown. And they wanted that trade building in the background. They were so proud of doing this. And as I continued doing this, I continued giving photographs back. More and more and more nurses found out about it and wanted to come out. I would walk down the street in the middle of the day and they'd say, hey, aren't you I want to get a picture. When are you going to be back to the hospital? Then I got a phone call from the nurses union. And they said that they wanted me to continue this, and they gave me the support to be able to continue this. And it's been going on for about 9 weeks. This woman, very, very good nurse. You can see that her glasses are fogged as she's telling me about the fact that she lost her mother through this. And the caring that you started to see between the nurses, the making of the hearts. And this wasn't for anybody in particular. It was for all of the people in front of her that were sitting there clapping night after night after night. So as it went along, the nurses that would come out started getting less and less. And I asked the nurse, what's going on? And he says, well, it's getting better in the hospital. And I said, I better come up with another idea if I'm going to continue shooting. And I developed a sidewalk studio. And I invited people into the studio. Some of my, a little bit of medical problems of my own. I was a little compromised and I couldn't stay within these crowds. So I was able to pull the people out of the crowd over to my studio. And this gave me the chance to be very personal with these people. And the eyes were just amazing on everyone. One time, a whole group came out in their full PPE, just to come out to be photographed.
Bruce, I just have one quick question. It's Frank. You know, shooting all these years like you do, what do you miss, or do you miss not seeing a full face? I mean, eyes tell a whole story as well, but you know, is that hard to deal with, where you don't see the full expression?
I would have to continually look for ways of showing different instead of just eyes. And as I started photographing the eyes, I noticed that everybody's eyes were different, and they kept giving me these new photographs all the time. It was, and yes, I always, being a
The
portrait
line on it.
photographer, it was hard.
You need the line on it.
So the PPE that came out never came off. And if you notice, they've got two masks on. And a lot of times I couldn't see the whole face because for that 5 minutes, they couldn't derobe and show me the faces. And of course, these guys are real people, and they're real, and a lot of them are really funny, you know, would really ham it up. And it was just an amazing, that release. It was such a release. And I felt that that was really what I was doing, is I was giving back to these people a way of releasing. And the fact that the photographs are going up in the hospital was even better. This was actually lit by an ambulance that went by, because they're right behind me were all the ambulances. And again, Frank, you know, what you're saying, I think that the eyes are kind of the portrait of the image. It's, I don't know what, I get tongue-tied a little bit on explaining, because I got so involved that I am still shooting. It's an incredible celebration. I would get comments from the different nurses that it took an epidemic like this for some of them to realize how incredibly tight that they were and how much they really, really cared for each other. This was Mother's Day. Someone came out with flowers. So it was, you know, 5-6 minutes of Mother's Day's pictures. And a number of the nurses at the Lenox Hill on 77th are in the maternity ward. So some days they come out and say, I only got 1 minute to take a picture because I've got 3 babies. So there's babies being born and COVID patients dying right next to each other. It just, the emotions were just amazing. And of course you had to have I Love New York with the broken heart. And the police department was incredible support. The fight over PPE. Around these people were other people, were the clappers, the people who came every single night. The woman on the lower left with the star, she was there for the last, this woman here, Nora, this is Nora, and everybody knows Nora. For the last 9 weeks, she was there every single night. And just the amount of dishes that came out, pots and pans and sticks and bells. And we shot it all different times. Sometimes, you know, when I lost the light in the studio, we had to go to the street. And then the support that came from our other responders, the police, the mounted police, the footmen, the guys out of the subway, the fire department. They would come out and they would block Lexington Avenue so that none of the nurses would get hurt, and turn on their sirens and their horns and just make as much noise as they possibly could make. And it was just amazing. I guess so, an amazing amount of respect that everybody gave each other. And nobody, a lot of these people didn't know each other 8 weeks ago. Now they stop by, the bus drivers wave as they go by, the police stop and hang out. The fire department shows up. So it's absolutely amazing, absolutely amazing. One of the things as an American I love is the American flag. It is very personal to me, and I have had a 48 star flag since the late 50s. And I brought this flag out as one of my props for the studio for a couple days. And I would put this flag on this man's shoulder. And we would take the picture, and when he gave me the flag back, he gave it back to me as if it was a piece of crystal that if it dropped, it would be a disaster. And it was amazing, the communication between us because of that flag. It was just very, very moving. I remember every single person that I gave this flag to, there was no way it was going to drop on the ground. She was from Puerto Rico, a nurse here in New York, and we were able to combine the two worlds together.
Bruce, can you give us a sense of how long a period of time these shoots, a couple of weeks, a month?
I started on April 14th, and I'm going to be shooting next Friday again. About a week and a half ago, the nurses stopped coming out. The clapping kind of stopped. The hospitals were getting in far better shape. The gas tank is left for the oxygen. The morgues have been taken away from the back. But I'm sitting here just fearful of another run of this, and what it's going to look like and what we're going to go through. And again, I will be there to continue this if it's there. I want to get into the hospital, but it's very, very protected, and not able to do that.
So with all this time of going back, and you've become part of this story as well on some degree. I mean, these people have to recognize you. There's Bruce, right? I mean, you've become part of their story.
Yes, very, very, very much so. And to the point of people emailing me and saying they can't find the photograph. If you go to my Facebook page, Bruce Byers, and look at the gallery of nurses of Lenox Hill, there's 18 to 2,000 photographs on there. It was the only way that I could show them. There's 1,300 members of this union. Unfortunately, I didn't get to photograph them all, but that was the only way that I could get them the photographs, besides giving them photographs to put on the wall of the hospital. And just that you had to be there. You had to be there one day, and you could see the camaraderie. And think about it. I've been there 9 weeks, probably almost every day. So this is the I call them, this is the gang from Greenwich Village. Just a wonderful, crazy group, and this is the gang from. And very small piece. And then remember, there's 1,300 of them, so just a group shot of each that I did that day. And in a way, I actually wrote this up for her to hold on to. I just got tired of being an artist in resident, and I just had to get out. I had to get outside and do something. So I think it's a piece of history. It's not the COVID shots on the street. But again, unfortunately, I'm compromised a little bit on my side personally, so I couldn't take the chance of going out onto the streets. This used to be daily what would happen. So I'm hoping that you got a feeling for. I mean, this is so much larger than I was able to show on the time that I was given. Please look at the Facebook. You'll see please support your nurse. I have been to this hospital a couple times, into the ER for certain things, and I tell you, the nurses are your best friends, get you through an awful lot. So I really, really thank Frank and our sponsors. And photography is my life. I love it. Please follow me and see what I do. Thank you, Frank.
Paul, I can't thank you enough for doing this for us. You know, Paul is one of the most respected commercial lifestyle adventure shooters, portrait shooters in the business. Always a class act. In all the years that I've had to work, knowing that he got a job from us and always nailed it. So it's really a pleasure to have Paul present. It's all you, Paul.
Okay. First, I want to say thank you, Frank, for inviting me to participate in the projection series. I've been watching for a few times now, and you've had some great photographers and great presenters, and I'm honored and humbled to be part of that group. And I also want to thank Cliff for helping us through the technical part of the presentation. Thanks, Cliff, for jumping on all these calls and helping us out through this. I also want to thank my co-presenters, Bruce and Stefan Falke, for making the evening so enjoyable. Okay, so my name is Paul Aresu, and I'm a photographer based here in New York. And tonight I am going to share some images with you documenting the COVID-19 heroes and essential workers during the healthcare crisis in New York City. Basically, almost from the time it started, maybe a week or two later than when we got all shut down, till now. Most of the images are portraits of the frontline workers. I work by myself. I go out and I photograph different locations each day. Some of the other images are portraits of New York City by itself, shut down by the government's orders. They are striking in the sense that no one gets to see this city or any city this size and population so devoid of people during the regular business hours. In addition to the images, I have included some slides with partial timelines to help everybody kind of replay what it was like to live through those 3 months of being locked down. I know it was like each day blended into each other, for me anyway, and time kind of passed surrealistically. So I put some timelines in there just so we can remember what happened during this time. So first thing I want to do is give you this slide here. I wrote this so everybody gets like a little bit intro of what I was trying to do with this project. First and foremost, this is a public health crisis, and the most important response is coming from the front lines. In hospitals, emergency services, and care facilities, we must extend our sincere gratitude to those dedicated individuals for putting their health at risk day after day in service to others and our nation. The forceful measures we as a country have taken has brought our economy to an abrupt halt. Many businesses have closed, people have been asked to stay at home, and basic social interaction has been curtailed. People have been putting their lives and livelihood on hold at significant economic personal cost. Right now, what I'd like to do is give you a sort of like a small overview video that I put together of the images. And then after the video, what I'd like to do is show you the stills and sort of walk you through what I was thinking when I was shooting this. So here's the video.
Hello everyone. We are running subway service to get essential place to work. If you don't have to travel, please stay at home. It's for everyone's health and safety.
So that was some partial images of the whole project that I've shot. So how this came about, we all were working and we're coming to the studio every day, and then all of a sudden, we're told we have to stay home. And for the first few days, being a photographer, I was like, where am I going? I don't have any work. All my projects have been shut down. I have a staff I have to pay. So I started concentrating on the PPP loan that the government was giving. And luckily I was quickly given the loan from the government. And once that sort of happened, I felt a little bit more free to concentrate on photography. So this here is a timeline of what happened around the winter time, and then moving on to the time we started shooting. This is what I saw at the beginning of the shutdown. Everyone was confused and in shock. I thought it would last a week, 2 at the most. I didn't know what to expect during the first days. I knew I wanted to photograph and document the crisis, but I didn't know where I should start. So I decided I would shoot New York City iconographic locations. I would shoot where people congregate, commute, meet, and generally hang with each other. I picked a few spots like Grand Central, World Trade Center, subways, Metro North. And when I emerged from the subway this first day, I found this image. This was Grand Central. It was closed. I could not believe what this looked like. Normally it's thousands and thousands of people getting through the station every day.
Well, can you just share like your progress from being this well-established commercial photographer, setting everything up? What drove you, aside from the photography piece? I got to go out and shoot this. What was your motivation?
Oh, well, my motivation was I have to go out and shoot this. But Frank, just my history a little bit. I'm a graduate of School of Visual Arts back in the day. And, we studied, when I was in college, I was a street photographer. So all along, I've had that passion in my heart. And, I've studied, the greats, Roy DeCaraver, Mary Ellen Mark, Barbara Walls, all these photographers that, I knew and loved at the time, and I assisted, some great photographers, Richard Avedon and Irving Penn. So, street photography has always been part of my passion. It hasn't been where I made most of my living, but, I really love doing it. It gets me away from just the commercialized side of photography that's sort of, a lot of it art directed. A lot of art directors, have their vision. So it's more collaborative. In this way, in this particular project, it was all about me shooting the images that I wanted to shoot. And it was right here in New York. And it was such a big historical story that I knew I had to cover it. That being said, over the past few years, I've worked with a lot of non-for-profit companies like Robin Hood Foundation, who I've shot for the last 5 or 6 years. And, we're shooting a lot of homeless people, food pantry lines, portraits of the homeless. I also work a lot for the LLS, Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and I document all their events around the country. So I've been documenting not so much to make a living, but to just do it because I really love doing it. So, in essence, having the commercial backing and making a living from the commercial work allows me to do this kind of work that I absolutely love to do.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, in some way, it was a blessing to have this time to get back to something that was always stirring in your brain and in your heart for the longest time.
You know what? You broke up on that, Frank. What's that?
What I'm saying is this opportunity came and it hit that spark in your brain and in your heart of this love for photojournalism
Mm-hmm.
that you embraced, magnificently.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't such a stretch for me to shoot this.
Right.
Is what I guess I'm saying. It's just it's a passion that had to come out, and I felt there was a lot of things about this one. It was a little bit dangerous, which sort of I embraced that kind of thing. I like living a little bit on the edge. It wasn't so much like it was a war zone where bullets were flying, but it was, some people had to take a risk, and I felt like I could do it. I was a healthy guy. I don't feel like I needed to be, if I did catch it, I felt like I could survive it. So I did take the risk in that way. So let me just move on with these pictures now.
Yeah, sorry.
So as I was photographing the city and all the landscape and walking around those first few times I was in the city early on, I noticed that what I really liked doing was taking pictures of the people, not just the city being empty. So it kind of gradually developed from landscape photography for the first couple of days into these portraits that I was doing. So walking around, taking pictures on the subway. There's another timeline. Every once in a while, I would run into a store or something that was shut with signs on it that would highlight a little sign or something to the doctors and nurses on the front lines, and I tried to photograph those whenever I saw that. I also seem to always come back to Midtown, Grand Central, because it was such an open space and it really showed the emptiness and the lack of people that was happening in New York City, which is kind of a strange thing for me. I'm used to having thousands and thousands of people around me, commuting every day on the subway, and seeing Central Station like this was just so eerie and so strange and so surrealistic.
And Paul, are you going out by yourself, or are you taking an assistant with you?
Okay, so yeah, no, I really didn't want to put anybody in danger. I usually work with a lot of assistants, as you know. I usually work with a big crew. You know, there's always a few assistants around, hair and makeup and art directors and all that. So this was all me. This was just me walking around and, you know, picking the spots that I wanted to go to that I thought were important to document, and waiting around to see what would happen in those spots. So it really, you know, I guess it was just through experience that I knew what places to go to. I'm also a native New Yorker, so, you know, I know New York very well. And being a native New Yorker, I picked spots that would photograph terrifically, I thought, anyway, be great backgrounds.
Yeah, so Paul, that had to be incredibly liberating.
Agreed. I mean, it really is. And I think, you know, throughout my career, I have always done personal projects like this. If you check out my website, you can see there's a personal project drop-down menu. You can see what I've shot over the years. I did a big project, and it's still ongoing, for 15 years of jazz musicians. I've shot hip-hop artists over the last 10 years. I did a project on Brighton Beach. So yeah, I have a lot of projects that I have shot over the years that, you know, are just personal projects and, you know, liberate me, like you said, from the advertising world. This shot here is usually so busy, this street. It's the Park Avenue Viaduct that circles around Grand Central. Usually hundreds of cars per hour up and down this street here. And during the first days of the shutdown, this is what it looked like.
You know, Paul, it sounds like when you were shooting, you were discovering at the same time.
You know, you never really see the architecture or the landscape in this way, which is kind of amazing. And you know, I thought about using different lenses or longer lenses for this. And I said to myself, you know, I'm going to use a little bit wider lens just so I can get the whole picture in, the whole depth of field, everything in focus, so everybody sees what happened here, what this city looked like during this time. You know, there were not a lot of people walking around those early first days. And, you know, whenever you saw a person, it was like, oh, grab your camera and shoot this. And, you know, I tried to speak with everybody I shot. But this guy here was an essential worker going to work here at Grand Central. And, you know, like what you said, the architecture, you know, I never looked at the architecture so closely in Grand Central to see something like this. There's always people in the way.
Very true.
So there's another timeline. You know, walking around Manhattan, Midtown Manhattan and Grand Central, the only people that were around were these essential workers. And that's how the project sort of morphed from the landscape into the essential heroic worker thing that I was shooting. So here's a block that's so busy, I can't even tell you. It's usually backed up for 2 or 3 blocks of traffic, people honking their horns, screaming at each other. And here I come out of Grand Central and I see this, and it's totally empty. It's so strange to see this. I also love jumping on a subway, and this was a little bit risky for me, I thought at first, because nobody knew at the time about these surfaces that you weren't supposed to touch. So what I did was I was wearing, you know, latex gloves. I had my mask on. I had glasses on, a hat on. You know, at the time it was cold out also, so I had a winter jacket on. So it was, I felt fairly safe, even though the subways we were told they were, you know, contaminated somewhat. So anyone on the street, I would also ask if they would sit there and allow me to take their pictures. So these pictures that you're going to see are people who I talked to during the shoot. I made these little headlines for each shot just so everybody would understand who they are, where they were during this time. And as you can see by their wardrobe, it was cold during those early April days. This is a stunning shot for me. I mean, you never, ever see Grand Central like this. The only two people that are in the main lobby here are the two policemen on the right.
He kept on pulling you back, huh? You just got amazed by it.
Yeah, well, for the portraits, I was pulling in tight, but for the landscapes, I definitely pulled back a lot. And you could see by the clock what time it is. It's like it's 12:45 or so.
No, I'm saying it's pulling you back emotionally, like you always go back.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
look at that. That's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable to me. You know, when I step down onto the station, it's usually 4 or 5 people deep waiting for this number 6 train. It's kind of amazing to see that there was absolutely nobody around for minutes.
Yeah, Paul, did you ever get tested for COVID?
I did not. I don't think I had it, although I must say our close friends early on, March 2nd to be exact, their college student came home from Italy, and they contracted COVID right away. And they live about 3 houses down from us. So we were a little bit worried that we came in contact with them, but we never got it.
Right.
This is one of my favorite shots here. Sort of like a metaphor for what happened here. You know, the lone commuter representing America standing alone in this great abyss of Grand Central Station with 2 National Guard behind him.
It's sort of intriguing.
What camera are you using?
This is a 35 millimeter DSLR, a Canon camera, the Mark II, EOS Mark II, the 1DX. That's what it is.
I mean, you know, you're in the category of fine art prints on a lot of these, right?
So yeah, I guess they are. That wasn't my intention. My intention really is just to create pictures that are interesting, that talk to me, that really are emotionally powerful, that capture what like a viewer might feel when they're in that situation.
Mm.
So, again, taking another train, getting on this train and actually seeing just one person there when you could, normally you're standing cheek to cheek, shoulder to shoulder with people on the 6 train during, any time of the day. It's kind of crazy. Never mind, now you could even see the seats and the floor. It's like, wow, this is absolutely amazing to witness this.
Yeah, trains never look so clean.
Yeah. So, and then getting back to Grand Central, the essential workers who I love to photograph. Here is a train conductor in this situation, just waiting to get on this train to get home with no other commuters. Usually this train, and you can see there's, 10 cars. Each car is usually packed full of people. And here it is, just one person on the track. I walked down to the Oculus down by the World Trade Center, the train station that houses the PATH train, the number 1 train, the R, 4, 5, and 6 trains. And usually this is just as packed as Grand Central, if not more so. Tons of people milling and walking around, everybody getting off the subway and running to different places here. I walked into the mezzanine here, and I looked, and there were only 2 people on the floor. I had to take this picture. It was absolutely amazing.
And the access that you had, did you need a press pass, or there was just anyone that was, you know, walking? They just let you in, Paul?
Um, at this point, this was pretty early. This was, yeah, these were the early days. This is before I started shooting the healthcare workers, which I'll get to in a second. I'm sorry, I'm really going slow. I'm sorry. I'm taking time on all these pictures. I'll kind of run through them quickly.
Okay.
So this was a family, you know, again at Grand Central Station, which was unique. You didn't see anybody, never mind a family, traveling together. So I thought this was like a unique picture. I had no clue why they were even traveling, but they're heading home to White Plains. This is outside Grand Central. This is the taxi dispatch worker. He was so happy to see me. There was no one on the street, as you can see. Taxis were waiting almost an hour before they get one person to drive in them. Grand Central again. Am I taking too much time here, Frank?
No, well, you're moving along. Just,
Okay.
yeah, move on.
Okay, this shot, now we're getting to the healthcare workers a little bit more. So these guys here are the emergency service unit guys who had just dropped off a patient at Elmhurst Hospital who was being transferred from Rikers Island to Elmhurst. And that's where they housed all the inmates from Rikers who were sick with COVID. Again, train. Grand Central Mezzanine. This is midday, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Back at Grand Central. Another timeline here. Essential workers were the only people to be found in Grand Central. Another essential worker. As this developed, I knew I wanted to get out of Manhattan and get into the other boroughs. So I started thinking about going to Queens because, you know, everybody on the news was talking about how Elmhurst Hospital was overrun. That was the hot spot in New York City. This is probably mid-April when they were setting up those morgue trucks outside. So I just went there, I drove there, parked there and hung out there for a few days and met so many amazing people. This is Danielle DeSanza. She actually introduced me to so many people and actually got me into the hospital to photograph.
And Paul, as you can continue on, can you speak to the emotional piece of this? You know, because this was something so different from what you've done for many years, putting yourself in harm's way, you know, the studio versus outside, all of that. I mean, like, what was the stress level when you got back home and, you know, you're talking to your wife and the kids and, you know, all of that? I mean, you know, can you speak to that a bit as you go through the slides?
I think everyone in New York City here has, you know, a heightened stress level, you know, for all of this. It's not just you know, this was almost a release for me to get to know these people. This almost calmed me down rather than made me stressful. Being outside, you know, this is my element, photographing, making portraits of people, talking to people. So this to me was like a release and anti-stress in a big way. It totally freed me up to, you know, create some amazing pictures of these people. One of my favorites here. This guy came out exhausted. You know, I just stationed myself there's a couple of places you can station yourself at Elmhurst Hospital. There's the front door there, and then there's the around the back where all the morgue trucks were and the testing tent. I'll get to that, but the front of this was really where the action was, as far as where the doctors and the nurses came out showing how exhausted they were. You know, this is not, you know, during the end of this. This was like the height of this when they were really working around the clock. So you could see it in their eyes, what happened here. I met this young girl. She's heading to Sinai. She's totally stressed about her job. You know, for me, I wasn't stressed, but the people who were stressed were the people who were working. And this kind of taking their picture, I think, made them feel really, really good. I felt kind of really like I was giving back to all these workers by photographing them and telling their story. I just really wanted to tell their story, and I think they were super grateful for it. You know, during regular times, people like this, they really don't like their picture taken at all. And I found during this time, they were more than receptive. They were like, yeah, sure, take my picture. It was like, wow, this is like way different than what I experienced on a regular day. These two EMS workers, they were up at Sinai. This is an interesting story here. I had a mask that I was wearing for like a few weeks, one of those N95 paper respirator masks, and it was falling apart. Really, like one of the strings, I had to tie around my ear because it came off. And they noticed it, and they actually gave me a new mask to wear. And they said, you need this, put this over your mask. It's going to help you, which I thought was such a generous act of kindness. It was amazing. You know, at that time, those masks they were rare. They were hard to get. You couldn't even get them online. So it was a rare thing that they would give me this mask. This is outside Elmhurst where the trucks were parked outside. This is the testing area outside Elmhurst Hospital. You could see the worker at the top here above her hand, dressed in all the PPE, allowing people who want to get tested into that tent. This was a dangerous spot. I felt sort of threatened here health-wise, just because there were so many people that felt that they had COVID, that this was maybe one of the most dangerous spots right here. Again, I try to photograph people's eyes, for me, eyes are everything. When I do a portrait, I want to know what they're feeling. Their eyes tell it all when they look into a camera. Here, this doctor is telling me he's exhausted. This young lady was super happy for me to take her picture. It was sort of she was relieved. That's at Elmhurst. You know, I was switching off hospitals. I went to Sinai a few times. I went to Elmhurst a few times just to mix it up and get different people, different days, different weather, different lighting conditions, all kinds of ways I thought to mix up the photo shoot. Doctors and nurses. You know, every day at these hospitals, I didn't realize this until a few days into it, that the nurses and doctors would get free donated lunch deliveries from these amazing restaurants and food preparers around the city who would just pull up in these SUVs and minivans and deliver a boatload of food. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of meals delivered, 6, 7 SUVs packed to the top full of meals for these doctors. They had no time to go out or order lunch for themselves. So people would just volunteer and drive up. First responders. Another sign, I thought this is right across the street from Elmhurst. This is thanking all the frontline workers. This is an essential worker that walking around Manhattan, all I saw were messengers, UPS drivers, FedEx drivers, and Amazon workers. These were the essential workers. These were the people who were helping us get through this whole situation. So I had to document them, and I felt obligated to, tell their story too. Of course, the first responders are important. This was, these guys were responding to a gas leak in one of the buildings in Manhattan. This was shocking to me to see National Guard fully decked out at Grand Central, the exact spot where I walk almost every day for the last 10 years. Walk right through there. And I couldn't, everything was closed in Grand Central. So you couldn't even walk through the main entrance. You had to actually walk through some sort of side entrance to gain access to Grand Central. Subway workers were my favorite. Usually when you try to take a picture of the subway workers, these conductors, they really don't like this. They close the windows, they do all kinds of things not to be photographed. In these days, these COVID days, all these conductors were thanking me for taking their picture, for telling their story, and looking right into the camera, which was absolutely amazing. I mean, policemen never really allow you to take their pictures, but they wanted their picture taken. First responders, fire department guys, never liked their picture taken. They were just posing for the picture, which was so strange. A nurse outside the hospital. I made a point to actually get a lot of the names, mostly the names and email addresses. And I also, after the day's shoot, I'd go home, download the pictures and send them images. And they were so thankful emailing wise back to me. It was absolutely amazing. In fact, I'm still in touch with a few of the nurses and doctors now. This is Dr. Bud Zimmerman. He's a cardiologist at Phelps Hospital. And after speaking with him, he invited me up to the COVID floor at the Phelps Hospital, which was kind of amazing, actually. And I said, but you're a cardiologist. What are you doing on the COVID floor? And he says, at this point, it's all hands on deck. I just remember that ringing out in my ears. Just, I couldn't believe how busy they were there.
And Paul, is the police cooperation any different from the beginning to where we are now?
Well, right now, I think the police are under such duress, such stress because of the protest. I don't think they would react the same way as they did even just 2 weeks ago. Yeah. I think pictures are off limits. I think, you know, I think during that time period, there was a camaraderie between photographers and the frontline workers. They wanted their stories told. And I don't think police really want their story told right now. There's been a seismic shift in the way they think of themselves now.
Yeah.
This is a person fully decked out. She just came from the COVID floor at Elmhurst, which was the hot spot. It's just amazing to see these people come and go, like hundreds of them per day, come out exhausted from what they were doing. So here's a guy, Amit Guha, who owns a pizza place, and I'm going to read you this here. He wrote me an email, and it says, "Hello, Paul. Thank you very much for taking photos and sharing the same with me. It's a blessing for me. Today was our 47th day of continuous service to the hospitals. I am fortunate to have my associate and great friend, Balori Sengupta, as the backbone of our sustained operation. She is a New Yorker and does all the operational logistics to ensure a smooth workflow. To date, we have served over 6,000 frontline essential workers, our real heroes, across 7 hospitals, 2 police precincts, 1 firehouse, and a bank, all risking their lives in fighting COVID-19. I hope we get more resources to continue our services for 100 days, for our 100-day milestone. Thank you again. Best regards, Amit Guha.
Wow.
Yeah, and so he wrote another, there's this email to me, I just put it in writing. And then back on his picture, he wrote this Bengali poem. And he asked me to put it on his picture. And you can see the pizza inside his truck here that he's delivering to these workers. And this is what the poem reads. And it's directly to me, which was absolutely amazing. I mean, this is kind of what happens when you do this kind of photography, Frank and group. You make friends and you talk to them and you get their story. And to me, that's like the whole story.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing to talk to people and get their life story. This is another company delivering, that's a different SUV delivering this food. This food is on this trolley here coming into the hospital. This is at Sinai during a break for the nurses. Again, a frontline worker, MTA worker. And this sign here is on the message board outside Sinai. So during this pandemic, actually, Robin Hood contacted me and they wanted me to photograph at some of their food pantries, which I thought, wow, this is like an amazing addition to what I've been photographing. So, and they were doing that TV special, Rise New York, and they needed some images. And, you know, like I said before, I've been photographing with those guys for, 5 or 6 years, and I've done a lot of special events for them, photographing all the 5 boroughs, shooting homeless people, the food pantries, really getting into the nitty gritty. And they trusted me to shoot more pictures for their TV special, Rise New York. I don't know if you saw it, but anyway, this is at this food pantry called POTS, Part of the Solution. It's an acronym for POTS. It's based in the Bronx and it provides 500 meals a day for the local community. And this shot here is Leroy Brown, the food preparer and head chef for POTS. And because I'm working for the Robin Hood Foundation, I have the backing of them and of course POTS, and they asked all their clients who were on the food line, the pantry food line, if I could take their picture. And of course they said yes, because they were so indebted to POTS for giving them food for all this time. So I had full access to all the people on the food line. And you could see the line stretching around the corner. There were literally hundreds of people on this line, A, because they had to be 6 feet apart, so they're not packed into next to each other. So the line goes way, way, way around the block here.
Paul, we got to move it along a little bit.
Okay, sorry. So the last few, just like Bruce, I went to Lenox Hill Hospital during those celebrations at 7 o'clock. And we pretty much captured the same thing. And really, it was a joy to see these people release what they were doing. So, and just my last slide here. There are more than 1 million frontline workers who provide healthcare, social services, and public transportation delivery, building cleaning, grocery shelf stocking, and other sorted worker jobs according to the New York City Controller, Scott Stringer. There you have it.
That's a great story. I have to say, it sounds like you went on a great discovery in so many different ways for yourself, for the city, for the workers. It's a great body of work to as a testimonial to what everyone went through. Really beautiful work. Right.
Oh, thank you, Frank. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I'm sure everyone did. We'll
Do you want me
yeah.
to stop share?
Yep. I'm sure Cliff
We can
will
stop the share.
Cliff will cut you off in a second.
Excellent presentation. Thank you very much, Paul. I appreciate that.
Yep.
It's great.
Thank you, guys.
We'll take a 1 or 2 minute break, and we have Stefan coming up next. Great job, Paul.
Thank you. Did that go in?
And as we're getting set up, everyone should remember that Friday is the deadline to get in any video clips of essential workers for our special presentation on the 24th next week. We've got a whole bunch of really terrific work, and if you have something you'd like to shoot, go shoot it to celebrate these incredible heroes, these essential workers who are in harm's way every day.
And I will say, again, we mentioned this last week too. You don't have to do it in person if you don't want to, if you don't feel comfortable with it. You can ask them to film themselves. You can do it remotely. Take a look at back where, Charles Chesler did in one of the first live events we've done virtually. You could do it through Zoom, just like we're doing right now. There's several ways to do it that you'll stay safe. Couple of tips to remember: if you could do it horizontally, right, in the landscape mode, that would help us a lot. We've got a lot of some vertical videos. Sound is always good too. If you have any questions, reach out to Frank or I. We're happy to help you. So let's move it along. I think we're just a little bit behind the schedule. I apologize again for that hack before. I did open up the chat rooms again. I did lock the video. I opened up the chat room. So there's a lot of great comments in there that you guys have left for the previous speakers. Continue to ask questions as we get into the last presentation. And let's kick it off.
All right, Stefan, it's all yours. Stefan is a repeat speaker, and we're thrilled to have him. So it's all yours, Stefan. Take over that screen.
All right, I just unmuted you, Stefan. You're good to go.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Bruce. It's a perfect to follow. And you have to share the screen. Are you seeing me?
You have to put your video on.
There we go. Sorry, I forgot. There we go. Hi, everybody.
Hey, Stefan.
So share screen. There we go.
William King says, "Happy birthday, Stefan."
Oh, thank you so much. I was about to say that. Thank you.
I made note of that, and I forgot to say it.
So happy birthday from everyone.
Yes.
Birthday present from Frank and Cliff. So we're having fun doing this. You can't go anywhere in New York anyway, so this is a great way to spend the evening. We had cake in between. So, well, I'm a New York City photographer. shoot stories for magazines. I shoot album covers and movie posters, movie stills. Usually I shoot things that are more or less arranged. So I'm not really usually going out just shooting pictures, although I do that a lot with my iPhone, but definitely not in the way I've learned to do that the last few months. And this situation in New York really made me a street photographer. And I just love being out there and shoot, because as somebody else before me said, you finally have a view on New York. There's so many people out here. I live in Chelsea. If you leave Chelsea midday or something, I mean, you can't, you have to pay attention to whatever is going on around you. So you don't really, you use all your energy for that. So you don't see anything. And this situation really allowed me to, well, I'll show you. I started with the signs because, as I said, usually what I'm doing is kind of arranged. So I kind of need a storyline, or I need some kind of a goal. So I didn't really know what to do in the beginning, but I knew I had to do something. So I started shooting these signs, which to this day are still for me the biggest sign of the crisis. Because if you walked up Fifth Avenue, I mean, every single store had a sign in it. So I ended up with a lot of these pictures. And the Lego one really made me cry almost. And there's so many stores that you take for granted, and they're not there anymore. Most of them say temporarily, but you know, as we know now, some of them might be gone forever. But anyway, after doing that, I mean, this kind of runs out of steam. If you do a project like that, that's like a day or two, and then you know, it's done. I mean, it doesn't matter if I have 50 signs or 500 signs. The story is told in 50. So funny enough, Paul had almost the same picture here, except there was no person at all in it. So I found at least one person. I pretty quickly was looking after that one person in the picture. I realized by walking through New York, there's either nobody or there's always this one person. So I was focusing on that. I had a few stories to shoot about delivery guys, the bicyclers and the FedEx and mailman. So I was after, you know, I was trying to take pictures of those. And especially the mailman were always just, you know, just one per street or per avenue, just amazing. And I love, you don't see me. I love this particular picture because this mailman was so lost, because he's used to all these stores being open and just hand deliver the mail, and now he didn't know what to do with it. So this is kind of a particular picture I like a lot. This is the doorman in Chelsea, whom we know pretty well, and you know, all these guys were really approachable and friendly, and all of a sudden you have like almost a construction site situation in the lobby, and everybody, I mean, just the distance we keep to each other is so mind-boggling. And this picture for me kind of describes that. I mean, now they even have a plastic, it looks like a bank. And so, but again, it was after the one person somewhere in the picture, and sometimes that was even difficult to find. I mean, I'm not a, you know, I am a people photographer, so I needed one person in the picture, and often that took like an hour waiting somewhere. If you had a frame or something and you wanted to shoot it, I had to wait a while for somebody to walk through my picture. Like this theater, I came back probably 3 times and waited half an hour and, you know, different frames. All the pictures you see, by the way, I have like dozens or sometimes hundreds of them, and not always does it match with my idea when people walk through. And this one I really like a lot because it's this home office kind of idea that somebody would probably take the chair from the office to their home, or, you know, whatever. There's a lot of, leaves open a lot of ideas, but that's what I thought when I saw this. It was in Times Square, And like anybody else, I mean, I wouldn't use the subway in the beginning. In the first shot you saw was in the very beginning until I realized this is not a thing to do. So I avoided the subway totally and just went to places that I could reach by foot.
You know, it's an interesting thing, Stefan. Like Paul, you know, the city takes on a whole different feeling without people.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I mean, especially New York. It's like, I mean, where is everybody? You see a little person on the right hand, and then, you know, if you start looking, you see people. They're all in the shadows and hiding. And Grand Central, absolutely mind-boggling. There's one person waiting for whatever, and there was literally nobody else in that whole building. I don't like the shot that everybody else takes, so I try to find a different angle. I actually like this one.
And when you recognize there's no people and it's really the buildings and its shapes and forms, what does that do for you as a people shooter?
Yeah, again, as you can tell in this picture, it wasn't enough to shoot the person standing there, which I've done too. You know what you know, this is the picture I was after. I always shoot like numerous frames of the situation if I can, if I have the time. And this was really what I wanted: is the monumental building. I mean, the building is just so massive, unthinkable that they actually wanted to tear it down many years ago. Such a wonderful room, and there's nobody in there. So kind of a waste of space too, but so beautiful. And those lights and the lamps and the ceiling and everything. You know, it again gives you time to look at all that. I never do really, because I'm always looking at the person. Now I still look at the person, but only in a way like, how does he walk or move or run, or, you know, I want the legs show that they're in motion, and, you know, it's not just, oh, a person click. You know, I'm really focusing on how that person is situated in the picture. And I always shoot them like from going from left to right. I have like, I could do a stop motion picture of every single picture, which I may actually do at some point. And then I choose the one that just works. And the Brooklyn Bridge like this is just unimaginable. I mean, as if there was police on one side, police on the other, and they stopped everything for us to shoot this picture. That would be the only plausible thing, you know. This, I mean, even those two pillars there, I never really paid attention to them. And down there, having one person crossing your picture is unimaginable, usually. And needless to say, everybody, and I would only take pictures of people who would wear a mask, because the mask is a timestamp, you know, you know, you're in 2020. If you're in New York City, somebody's wearing a mask, this is 2020. So if I saw people without a mask, I wouldn't take the picture. This, yeah, same thing. I mean, when do you see not only no people, but also no cars in Times Square? And I went to Times Square like, I don't know how many times, 10 times. I can walk there. So in the beginning, again, I wouldn't take any transportation or taxi or subway. So I would just go to places that I could walk to. And sometimes that was painful, because when you take pictures, you just walk, and then something new, and then you keep taking pictures, and then you realize you're 10 miles from your home, and you got to walk all the way back. So happens quite often, but keeps you fit. But Times Square is always easy for me. It's like a half an hour walk, or less even. And Times Square is absolutely fantastic these days. It's just, there's something new every day. This sign I would come back to quite often, especially since all the protests started and the unfortunate events that led to them. This is always a sign of hope, you know. I try to avoid shoot things that say what I'm thinking or say what I'm showing, but I just love this sculpture. And it has a lot of meaning these days, or any day. Union Square, you know, always these steam pipes are always so photogenic. I don't know why, but they're like celebrities of New York. And again, you know, all of a sudden, I would never frame a picture like this I don't know, I just do, you know, I'm meeting people, I'd shoot stories about people, maybe I would pose them there, I don't know, but this is pure street photography, and this really made me a street photographer. It's interesting, I love it.
And what was the decision to shoot color or black and white?
There is no decision, I just shoot color.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Generally. I started black and white, like many of us, you know, I learned photography in the darkroom, developing my own black and white and printing it and going back and shooting it better and printing it again. But that was a phase that, and then I started shooting Kodachrome, and I shot slide film all my life. I never shot a negative, I think, negative color film in my life. Or slide film, which is very helpful today because you're still going to be on target with your light and stuff. And you learn a lot by shooting slides. You either got it or you didn't. So I just love slide film. But when digital became as good as slide film, that was gone too. I would never shoot film again, I guess. I mean, maybe for some particular projects, but I'm a total digital photographer. I love it. I love the handling, the shipping, the not camping out at FedEx anymore, and you know, the quality is great.
Yeah.
So again, I shot a lot of male men, male women around the city. I probably shot 30,000 pictures in the last 2 months. So this is a real tiny bit of it. Again, I mean, the mask is the timestamp. You can take this picture any time of, you know, but this is just different. And being in New York, it's, you know, this is in Williamsburg. I shot a lot of, I love murals, so I shot a lot of people walking by murals. And I call this, first I called it New York in Crisis, and something that the title of my project kind of changed. And then I realized I really like the motion of people, because New Yorkers are New Yorkers. They just keep going. And that's why I called it then, Keep Going New York. So I also need people to go in my pictures. They're gonna go somewhere. And they're all as single as they are. They look as if they're meeting somebody. You know, this guy will probably go somewhere where there's others. So it's not that hopeless. And once in a while, I would let more than one person into the picture. This is the arrival of that hospital ship, which I covered. And yeah, I like that the one person, she's looking at the helicopters. There are helicopters like flies. This was a real difficult shot. I saw in one of my own pictures from the day before that there was a heart in the windows, and I didn't really realize that when I was shooting pictures. And so I went back next day, and I tried to find an angle where I could show people with masks walking or driving or whatever through, and this was a real tricky place to find. And but everybody who does photography on a serious basis, they know what to do. You know, you just got to go low and go the bikes go by and all that. But it took a while to get this shot. Coney Island is another place where my wife and I especially go to all the time. We love it there, whatever season or type of the day. Coney Island is just so special, and it just doesn't lose its specialty status. It just, you can do whatever to it. The boardwalk is just unmatched anywhere. So whenever we come out there, it's just Coney Island. This is in Williamsburg again. And this painter, he actually paints paintings that are up already. His name is Daniel Love, I think. And I lived in Williamsburg for 8 years. I love it there. This is not exactly a picture of the Sears, but I like it so much because it's so New York. This is when the protest started. This guy who probably is protesting for democracy in Hong Kong and or China just saw his opportunity to come out too, you know, and this, you see this in New York so often that somebody has a cause and somebody else says, hey, I have a cause too. Let's do it together.
That's New York.
That is really, this is a real New York shot. It even says New York, but
Everyone has a voice.
right. So New York, and that's another thing where I call it keep going New York. New York really just keeps going. I mean, New Yorkers are so resilient. And in the first few weeks, it was really puzzling not seeing anybody out there. I mean, sometimes I had to stand at the corner and wait for an hour until anybody would walk through the picture. That changed. And then you realize New Yorkers just, you know, you just can't stop them. They just keep coming out.
Good. It's a lifeline, right?
It's a lifeline. So, you know, everything is a little subdued, or very subdued, I would say, but there's still, you know, there's definitely photos to be taken. So this is when Fifth Avenue and Soho and all that was vandalized, and people started boarding up the stores. So the Macy's, as you can tell. And,
So this is the beginning of the protesting now.
this is the beginning of the protesting, although I don't have a strict timeline in this. It's kind of the timeline. I started in mid-March, I guess. I go out 2 or 3 days a week, I would say, and I only go out in bright sunlight. I just love the like midday bright, like the Kodachrome lights, I call it, the black shadows and bright lights. Most or many photographers try to avoid that, but I just love it. It gives you also clarity of what lines and structures and you know and composition. That's my time, and I want to show New York in as positive light as possible, even though you know this isn't that easy these days. But you know, I still love the city. I came here from Europe because I love the city. Many years ago, and that hasn't changed. So I don't want to do any harm to New York, and at the same time stay real. You know, I don't want to make it look better than it is or anything, or you know.
So Stefan, with so few people on the street, do you look at that as an opportunity, or wow, that's too bad, there's nobody on the street for me to shoot, or is it more about documenting the moment where there's nobody on the street?
It's the latter two. It's the documenting the moment. I work also as a photojournalist, but again, usually a more arranged. You go to an event, or you meet a politician, or you always go somewhere with some already defined story or goal, and so I have this adrenaline in me that photojournalists have. When something like this happens, I just need to be out. I need to witness it and capture it and document it. But I really had no idea in the beginning of what to do. I mean, this was so shocking and puzzling. And I'm somebody, by the way, I do not shoot catastrophes or something, or accidents, or anything of that sort. If it's loud and makes a bang, I go the other way. But something like this really pulled me out. I'm like getting itchy every day.
Right.
And it's the lack of people, not because, as I said in the beginning, I usually do not go out and shoot pictures around New York. I just, you know, without you know, an assignment or I just don't do that. And now I'm having fun with it. I mean, it's a bad word to say these days because the reason for my fun is a catastrophe. Let's not forget that, you know, there's something extremely wrong here. So, but it really pushed me to do this type of work. Loving it. So this is when they all started boarding up. And again, you know, it's the sadness of it, but at the same time, it's very New York in this picture. So I need both the movement and the sadness in order to not let the sadness overtake the picture. You know?
Yeah.
So these are the last 8 pictures that I took in the last 3 days. This was actually an assignment to Crown Heights. Some writer wrote a story about Crown Heights and how the situation is there. So they let me just portrait the streets of Crown Heights, and that was great. You know, that was what I'm doing anyway these days. And so I'll show you this was for the Swiss NZZ am Sonntag. This is not moving. And again, I just stuck to my new theme, which is one person, one picture, and they have to be on the move. And I have to wear a mask too. And Crown Heights is so interesting. I mean, I probably go back, and it's very large too. But it's so interesting and much busier than anything I'd seen in Manhattan. Not that I was showing that in these pictures, but there's areas of what is that avenue? The first I forgot. There's some avenues that are really busy. And I have a whole series of these different churches and shops starting slowly to open. It actually has 3 people in it. And then yesterday I went to Jackson Heights. So now I'm starting to go into areas that I know from other stories that I shot. I know that they are interesting and different, and see what I can do there. So the last 4 pictures, including this one, are in Jackson Heights.
Queens, for everyone who doesn't know.
Queens, yeah. Jackson Heights has the most nationalities on a square mile in the entire world. So just for people who don't know, yeah, it's probably one of the most interesting areas in the world. I mean, it's like the Polish next to the Filipino, next to the Colombian, next to the Indian. Yeah. It's endless. Like it's really cool.
Yeah.
This woman almost drove me nuts because I was waiting there for like 20 minutes and waited for her to walk away because she was waiting for somebody in the store. And she would just not move. So I thought, okay, I mean, it's just too good to be true. So I started taking pictures, and this particular movement to the baby, see the mask, the color matches the blue around and the red matching other. That's another thing, by the way, I've never, probably not in my life, was the color a decision maker in my pictures. I see black and white. I mean, not literally, but when I take a picture, I see it's in black and white. And I look for composition and this and that, but never for the color. That's always last. On this project, I really react to color, which I guess the lack of people or movement or whatever is doing that. All of a sudden, I'm focusing on different things. And one of them is the color. It's wonderful. This has become one of our favorites. She's like, I love the tattoo on her leg. And she's just, I mean, that's New York too. She's just moving. I mean, there's no.
Yeah, but Stefan, you're waiting to take this shot. You've got to realize that is an incredible. It's framed for you just beautifully with the colors and the squares and the angles and all of that, right? I mean, that's got to feel like putting a glove on.
Yeah, this is. I mean, you can imagine. I took many pictures of this exact same scene with other people coming through.
Yeah.
And when I saw her in the corner of my eye, I realized I had to move back just slightly You know, I had my frame. I always have my frame first, right? And then you
Right.
wait what happened. And so I had to step back like a notch, and that's why you have the car in the picture. But now the picture is so perfect, the car is not disturbing to me. I was literally thinking of cropping the picture, which once in a while I crop 10% or something if I really, really have to. In
Right.
this case, there's nothing I couldn't crop it without changing the ratio. So I just didn't, and now I actually like it there.
Yeah,
You
perfect.
know, there's nothing wrong with the entire, picture. And she is just like hammering through this thing. It's like, and that's the gift of photography. You just hang out in the corner and you have your frame, and then you don't know if anything happens or not, and then bam, If I come home with one of those pictures per trip, I'm like super happy.
Yeah.
I mean, not this is one at a time kind of thing. But if I come back with 1, 2, 3 like usable pictures, then I had a good day.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
My last shot also kind of, I mean, it wouldn't work if it wasn't for him who sent us the whole thing. Also shows you how busy
A queen's corner can be.
Queen's Corner can be. But I must say, everybody, I mean, most people, I would say 98% have masks on, so everywhere I go, so that's good to see. And that's it from me.
No, that is beautiful work. Really, really beautiful.
Thanks for having me.
No, we and for everyone, the door is always open to present again. New work. Recommending new people is always a good thing. But tonight was great. I mean, we really appreciate all the thoughtfulness that you guys put into putting together a presentation. I know it's not easy, and it's hard to edit it down to just what appears to be a few slides, but it's a lot, and we Cliff and I really, really do appreciate that.
As do the people in the audience. A lot of people are commenting; they love the work, and not just for you, but all the presenters. We didn't get a chance to cover a lot of that chat, but just wanted to mention that people really appreciate it. There's a lot of comments in the chat room. We try to cover a lot of the questions, but a lot of just comments like beautiful work, great work. So thank you, all of you.
Thank you.
For this.
Yeah, and remember, everybody, you have until Friday to submit the video piece of the essential workers. You have any questions, you can contact me or Cliff. And on the 24th, we'll be having that special evening of video presentation. So we're really excited about that. We thank you all for checking in, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Take care, everybody. Have a good night.